And they were divided. So they said again to the blind man, "What do you say about him? It was your eyes he opened." And he replied, "He is a prophet." Please be seated. Our gospel lesson this morning begins with a healing story, a miracle story. It's another long passage from John's gospel that runs a whopping 41 verses. It's essentially the entirety of chapter 9. It's interesting that only 2 of these verses describe the healing miracle itself, though. And it begins with the disciples assigning blame to the situation. They asked Jesus, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Like Eugene Peterson's The Message paraphrase of Jesus' response, which goes, "You're asking the wrong question. You're looking for someone to blame. There is no such cause-effect here. Instead, look for what God can do." Jesus is telling them, contrary to your beliefs, God doesn't cause illnesses as judgment or punishment for anyone. It's not how God or the world works. And besides, God's glory can be revealed in any person or situation, and particularly this one who was born blind, who, although he has no eyesight, or has more vision and more understanding than the whole group of you so-called disciples. Then, as we know, Jesus spits and makes a paste of mud, rubs it in the man's eyes, and sends him to the Pool of Siloam to wash, and he is healed. This seems to be where the real story begins, though. As soon as the man is healed, the whole community is faced with consternation and division over his identity. They don't believe he is who he says he is. Some say, "Isn't this the man who used to sit here and beg?" Others reply, "It can't be. It's just someone who looks like him." But the person who now sees keeps saying over and over again, "Excuse me, it's me. I'm right here in front of your face. It's really me. I'm the same person." Some believe him, but it seems like most dismiss him, refuse to believe his truth about himself. They refute his account of his own experience and his own description of the transformation which has just taken place in his life. The religious leaders sharply disagree among themselves. Some of them wonder if Jesus followed the proper method for healing. Did he take out his prayer book and inspect the rubrics and follow the right steps and the right orders? Did he do it the right way? Did he stick to the party line using the right words, politically correct or politically incorrect? If not, certainly he's not one of us. Some believe that regardless of Jesus' orthodoxy, his act of mercy and the relief experienced by the man could only be the result of God's generous love. So even the religious leaders become more and more conflicted, more divided. And some of them begin the process of dehumanization and demonization that we are all so familiar with in our own circles and communities. Finally, instead of celebrating the man or listening to him, celebrating this miracle and giving thanks for what's happened in his life, they exclude him from their fellowship. They kick him out. There's a cartoon, I'm not sure I can describe it, that really shows the situation. It's a cartoon by this online strip called The Naked Pastor. Does anybody read The Naked Pastor? And it's Jesus, and he's got this sheep on his shoulders. and the sheep, there's different versions of it. Some it has rainbow fleece, and some it has pink and blue fleece. And he's returning the sheep to the flock. And when the sheep says, "Whoa, whoa there, Jesus, that one wasn't lost. We kicked him out." That's what's happening in this gospel lesson. Saddest of all are the parents. I don't know if you caught that. Even the person's parents don't stand up for them for fear that perhaps friendships will be lost, relationships broken, perhaps they might experience economic hardship, or that they could become isolated themselves. I think it's easy for us to create these false binaries or notions of right and wrong. We can be loath to admit the facts right in front of our face. The boy was blind. Jesus made mud, put it in his eyes. He washed. He was healed. We have this great outpouring of love and grace right in front of us. Yet we want alternative facts. Maybe it's not the same boy. Could God's presence be at work in this outsider? Is there any chance of that? Of course there is. Sometimes our desire for control, for social validation, and our insecurities prevent us from seeing the goodness of those who may differ just a little bit from us, especially when we are hell-bent on being right, whatever that means, at all costs. One of my favorite poems is called The Place Where We Are Right by an Israeli poet. And I know I'll butcher the name, but it's Yehuda Amichai, who summarizes the heart of this passage in so much of what is driving the conflict and division in our own world. The place where we are right. From the place where we are right, flowers will never grow in the spring. The place where we are right is hard and trampled like a yard. But doubts and loves dig up the world like a mole, a plow. And a whisper will be heard in the place where the ruined house once stood. This poem describes a place where we may become stuck in our own ideas, our own notions, and refuse to listen to others or refuse to see the beauty in all of God's people, God's love at work right in front of us. The place tells us where we are right, flowers will never grow. It's hard and trampled like a yard. Interestingly, we had a discussion on Thursday night in which we watched the Church Next video on the conflict in our society by Bishop Miriam Buddy, who also spoke at the cathedral as well on Sunday evening about aspects of unity and the divisions we face as a people. If you're not familiar with Miriam Buddy, you might remember she's the one that gave the sermon at the inauguration in the National Cathedral. She says the first aspect of unity is that we all agree to respect one another's dignity. This dignity of every human being, it's enshrined in the founding documents of our country. It's embedded in the baptismal promises of this church. And it binds us together in God's love. Everything that happened to the man who was miraculously healed seems to be controversial. No one wants to allow a place for him or make a space, not even his parents. Yet he is the only one in the story who truly recognizes Jesus' identity, divine love in the flesh. And in fact, in chapter 9, is the Good Shepherd discourse of John's Gospel, and this is the one who is truly one of Jesus' sheep. Right or left, progressive or conservative, each of us bears the image of the divine, and all have an inherent dignity. It's not easy sometimes, but it's something we have to remember. Bishop Buddy secondly spoke about the importance of keeping honesty at the center of our discussions, interactions, and debates. We should expect our leaders to demonstrate integrity and ensure that our institutions are accountable for their policies and actions. At the same time, we should be careful not to immerse ourselves in toxic social media outlets or news sources that only confirm our own biases, and refrain from false or inflammatory rhetoric. But most of all, she spent her time talking about humility, this idea that we might be wrong every now and then. Surely not. Seems that humility is one of the scarcest commodities in our world. We spoke about these topics and our struggles with them Thursday evening, and this notion of kneeling and standing that Bishop Buddy talks about. To kneel is the acknowledgement that none of us has all the answers, that none of us are perfect, that we need one another. Many are hurting in this world, and many have been sold a lie, she says. She says it's not a weakness of democracy to have disagreement, it's actually a strength. It's one of the reasons I think going into it, I thought it was important for us to try our communion rail during Lent. This time of penitence. Seems like humility and this willing to bend our knee is becoming rarer and rarer. But she also talks about standing as well, to stand for. So while we kneel, while we recognize that we are all equidistant in our need for mercy from God, it's important that we stand for our values and not compromise our positions, safeguard our own inherent dignity. During this Lenten season, we confess the ways in which we have isolated ourselves from others due to our own fears, skepticisms, or rigidity. How have we refused to see God's goodness in those around us, those outside our own social status, demographics, nationality, political circles, generations, or economic ability? May the power of divine love move us beyond this place of right and wrong until the hard places in our own hearts and in our world. Amen.